I'm with David Parsons from the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem. Now, David, today we're talking about Rescue 250. What is that?
Rescue 250 is an initiative by the Christian Embassy to bring at least 250 Jewish immigrants to Israel every month during this Corona crisis. Ever since mid-February or so, we've been averaging around 250 new Jewish immigrants that we are flying here, flights that all the other flights are canceled, but somehow through the Jewish agency, Israeli officials, they're arranging the flights, and the Christian Embassy is sponsoring them. We've been averaging around 250 or so a month, and so we want to sustain this, and we turned it into a challenge and a campaign among our donors around the world to keep up this pace as long as we're in these Corona lockdowns and travel bans. And it's quite interesting, the faithfulness of God's people out there. Some of the money is coming from Taiwan and China. We've even gotten donations from Wuhan, where this virus first started, all the way to England, Germany, the U.S., Canada, and many other countries that are helping us sustain this.
And what sort of people are coming home?
Most of the immigrants coming to Israel, even last year, around 70%, still came from the former Soviet Union. There were, a lot coming from North America and elsewhere. And those numbers are still continuing. The majority of the immigrants coming now are from Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and the Christian Embassy is in a position as the primary sponsor of the flights for these immigrants with the Jewish agency. And we've also had several hundred Ethiopians that we've been able to bring in. Of course, there's 8,000 or 9,000 of these Falash Mora. They converted to Christianity, but they have family here. And there's a battle over bringing them in, and we're able to bring 50 or 100 a month right now, depending on how many get approved for Aliyah.
Are these people that were planning to come anyways, or are they wanting to leave because of the virus?
Look, the Ethiopians, some of them have been waiting 20, 25 years in these transit camps. They were sort of left behind, and the government has made a decision to bring them. It's just a slow process of vetting them and interviewing them. But the new Minister of Immigration Absorption, she's Ethiopian-born herself. The head of the Jewish agency, Isaac Herzog, they're determined to bring these people who've been waiting a long time. A lot of these Russian, Belarus, Ukraine, some of these, the majority that are coming, they were planning to come this spring or summer anyway. And some of them sold their houses, they sold their cars, they quit their jobs. They, quit leasing their apartments, and all of a sudden the coronavirus hits and they're in limbo. And in a sense, these are like rescue flights. That's why we've called it Rescue 250. They're evacuation flights that no other flights. El Al's not flying. Aeroflot is not flying anywhere, not just between Israel and Russia. But the flights that are coming, they're allowed to bring Israeli citizens who are like stranded in these countries and these immigrants because they're already approved for citizenship. And most of them on the flights are newcomers, they're immigrants. And it's really amazing, though, Paul, to consider during the coronavirus, there's hardly any planes flying anywhere. And yet we, by the grace and provision of God, the Christian Embassy has been able to help around 1,300 of these immigrants. For the month of July, as of next week, we will hit our target of 250. We'll probably wind up with around 300 for the month of July. And we just want to continue that pace and even increase it, seeing the faithfulness of God's people out there, that the Jewish agency keeps looking to us to help fund these flights. And it's a real honor to be able to do it.
Are there many other people doing anything like this?
There are other groups that sort of have their regions that they're like Nefesh B'Nefesh is an organization of American Jews who started this organization to help spur Aliyah from North America, from the U.S. and Canada. AMI is a group that works among French-speaking countries for the Jews to come home. There's other groups that say work in Ukraine or whatever, but they're not able to get flights right now. And Israeli officials, Jewish agency officials are able to get flights from Russia and Belarus and some of the other former Soviet republics were able to get flights, specially chartered flights, evacuation flights from Ethiopia. And these are the only ones that are coming into Ben Gurion now. I've been several times to the airport to welcome these flights. And up on the flight board there's 3 flights for the day and whatever. Where are they coming from? Some of them maybe cargo flights or something. And it seems the only flights coming in right now are these rescue flights that the Christian Embassy is sponsoring. It's quite remarkable for us. And that seems to be it.
How do the people feel when they get to Israel?
Look, I think they're very relieved to finally be, not only get here, to be moving forward in life. We've heard some of their stories, how they've just been lost for months now and really fearful about their future and so longing to get here. And even though they got to go into 2-week quarantine, they're quite happy to do it. They get a hotel near the beach or something. They got to stay in their rooms, but it's warm. It's Israel. It's the new country. There's a lot of excitement, still some apprehensions, but they all are looking forward to finally planting roots down in this country. Many of them have relatives here who, once they get out of quarantine, they're there to help them. And some of them have medical emergencies. There was just a 7-year-old boy who landed who has a special type of leukemia. And they need to do special treatments that Israel is well known for this. He couldn't get it in Russia. And so his parents, it's not only that they're here, but they've saved the life of their son by getting him here.
Wow. Is this fulfilling biblical prophecy?
Every day. It's the promise of God that He who scattered Israel will gather them and watch over them like a shepherd does his flock. There's far too many verses in the Hebrew prophets about the last days in gathering of the Jewish people back to the land. I think it's quite remarkable, Paul, when you think about where we are in historic in context, that about 120 years of the Aliyah, 140 years since 1880. Some came walking, many came by ship. Isaiah said the ships of Tarshish shall come first, meaning big ocean-going vessels. And then who are these who fly like a dove? All of a sudden, the age of flight, and bringing them back by plane, just as the prophets foresaw. It's quite amazing. And we're almost to the threshold of 50% of the Jews in the world being regathered back in the land. We're around 45%, and we've been sort of hovering here for a few years. And it may be the coronavirus that finally puts us over the edge where the majority of Jews are living back in the land, because there is a surge of interest in making Aliyah. Many Jews around the world, they see the anti-Semitism that this pandemic has stirred. They see Israel, by and large, has kept its people safe. We've got a second wave here. I think a lot of young people being careless and all, but I think Israel can still contain it. And so Israel looks more attractive economically, health-wise, and whatever for a lot of these Jewish families. And as soon as the travel bans lift some, I think you'll see the increase of the Aliyah flights. But right now, we are really seem to be involved in the only game that's going on with Aliyah. But it's the Word of God coming to pass before our eyes. It's amazing. Even the Corona pandemic could not stop the Aliyah.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask, do experts feel that there's going to be a surge of Jews coming back to the land?
All the indicators, the applications that are coming in to the main Aliyah organizations through the Jewish Agency, the head of the Jewish Agency, Isaac Herzog, he says that he expects around 250,000 Jews over the next 36 months or so, the next 2 to 3 years. That's a lot. And if that's the case, for me, it's an historic milestone that we finally, it's not just since the Roman dispersion of the Jews 2,000 years ago, it's actually the Babylonian exile. Since that 2,700 years ago in the Babylonian exile, the majority of Jews have not lived in the land. They've been dispersed. And that would be just an historic moment if over the next couple of years, because of Corona, the most of the Jews are back in the land. And it has huge ramifications for the Jewish people. Their religion has said as long as most Jews aren't living in the land, we don't have to observe temple worship. All the commands about temple worship. They decided this when they were dispersed and the temple was destroyed. And how is the majority back in the land going to impact this nation and their attitude towards, especially among the religious, their attitude towards how they observe their religion? It may start undergoing another transformation.
What other things is the Christian Embassy doing to help people during this time of crisis, during the coronavirus?
The Corona lockdowns really started in the lead up to Passover, and it felt like the whole world was in this global Passover that you go into your house and you stay there while this plague, goes over. Mm-hmm. And we thought we were coming out of that first wave, and now we've hit a second. But during Passover, we fed more people than we have at any other Passover. It was amazing. We cared for a lot of Holocaust survivors, that because our staff was keeping themselves clean and doing the right, observing all the health regulations, we were qualified to go out and help with food deliveries to people's doors, to go in-home visits actually and care for a lot of these survivors who were under a mandatory lockdown that they could not even leave their house. You and I, I could walk, a half mile to the grocery store, so 100 meters from my home to walk the dog. But these were elderly people who could not even leave their house. And a lot of that activity has continued now. We're helping, for instance, with a soup kitchen here in Jerusalem. They feed 400 or 500 people every day. They rely a lot on Christian volunteers from abroad who can't get in the country now. They were going to have to shut down, and we started rotating our staff in. There's 4 or 5, 6 of our staff going in every day to help them run their soup kitchen, and they feed people on site and then make hundreds of home deliveries every day. And without our help, they would have had to shut down. So it's a real honor to be really the hands and feet of Jesus here on the ground in Israel for so many in the body of Christ, and for the Lord to be using us in this way. This is what we're here for. None of our staff has left. Everyone is trying to stay active and do things to help and do good in the country.
What was it like for you personally during lockdown?
Yes. Look, this was quite unusual time. I had a lot more time with my family, but through Zoom, we're working remotely, and we've been as busy or busier than ever. I don't know when I've ever had so much sustained work, and it's required that we work in a different way. But by the grace of God and the energy and the inspiration that He gives us, the zeal we have for this work, we're actually doing more than we normally do. It's amazing, and the fundraising, I think we're ahead of last year. That our donor base, the Christians out there who support our work, somehow God is providing for them, and they're being generous and good, and they see we're active, that some Christian organizations have had to shut down and let go staff, and that's a real shame. But somehow we've found a way to actually be doing more than we normally do. And it's we just have to credit the grace of God and His provision through His people.
Have you seen God during this time?
I haven't seen God. Look, I had different things that God spoke to me early on in this crisis about it, that it's, in the prayer of Jesus, the high priestly prayer, John 17, He prayed, Lord, I pray that you do not take them out of this world, that you keep them from the evil one. And that's just very comforting to me. When you get saved and you're serving the Lord, don't expect him necessarily to treat you like you're just going to escape all troubles. You have to go through it with other people, but God is well able to keep us from the evil and the harm, and we need to be a light to others. And you get that comfort from God, that inspiration yourself, and your identity is in him, and he's going to take care of you. And it's time to reach out to others, because there's a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, a lot of questions, and a lot of people who, fear comes on you. And the question is it a godly fear? Is it a fear that turns you to him? Or is it a fear that torments and turns you away from the very thought and idea of God? And we're seeing, I see even in my neighborhood here in Jerusalem, a lot more of my Jewish neighbors wearing their kippahs and going to prayers these days. And that's a good sign.
Yeah. What's your prayer for Aliyah, for bringing Jews back to the land?
Yeah. Look, we're praying that we'll be able to not only sustain but increase the number of Jews that we're bringing home now. I think there's a real longing and desire for many to come home. I do think we're at this threshold where we're close to bringing, if there's around 250,000 Jews that would come in the next 2 or 3 years, as the Corona lockdowns lift and travel bans, we will reach this historic moment. And I really want to see that. We're talking about something that it's taken 2,700 years for this ingathering really to get to this point where it's irreversible. And I think spiritually, prophetically, theologically, it has big implications. And I believe in the Aliyah, and I pray that it just continues.
And what's your website for people who'd like to know more, perhaps get involved in the Rescue 250?
Yes. Our website is icej.org, very simple to reach. The Rescue 250, there's a special page for that, on.icej.org/rescue250. It's a special web address that we're keeping people track, rather than your normal thermometer of 250 a month. We're trying to reach our goal. We're using a plane there where you can go in and you give a donation and you feel like you're buying a seat on a plane, and over the month you can watch a plane with 250 seats fill up. And I think right now, as of next week, we may be close to 300 for the month of July, and that's fantastic. We blew right past the mark, and we want to keep going in the grace of God.
Okay, David, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.